All right, welcome back. We're going to finish up this first part of World War II here. So when we ended the last video, Germany and Russia had just signed this non-aggression pact in which both sides agreed not to attack each other. That's in August of 1939. And then on September 1st, Germany is going to launch a full-scale invasion of Poland. um, and France and Britain declare war on Germany, and ultimately World War II has begun. Yet, there's no conflict between Germany and France and England early on in the war. In 1939, the war is going to be focusing on German expansion eastward into Poland, and at the same time, the Russian government and the Russian army is going to be moving westward into Poland, and so Poland is going to be divided between the Germans and the Russians. The Germans are going to use something that's going to be referred to as Blitzkrieg, which is just loosely translates to lightning war. It's just fast mobilization of troops. They're going to use dive bombers and artillery, and then they're going to back it up with quick moving ground troops that are going to swoop in and hopefully catch enemy armies before they can prepare for attacks or for counterattacks. And Poland's going to take less than 4 weeks to fall. During that time frame, like we said, the Soviet Union or Russia is going to move into the eastern half of Poland and take Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland. And then nothing happens. That's the September, so October, November, December, January, February, March. It's just nothing. There's just quiet on the European war front. Many people are going to look at this as maybe that there's not going to be a war. Maybe Germany and France and Britain can work out some kind of a peace deal. Maybe this whole thing is just for show. And so there's not a fighting war during that time frame. But then in the spring of 1940, Hitler's going to turn his attention onto Western Europe, and he's going to capture Denmark and Norway and Belgium and the Netherlands very quickly. He's going to swoop into France in May of 1940, using much of the same plan that was established in the Schlieffen Plan. He's actually going to capture British and French troops in the port city of Dunkirk, which is in northeast France. And the British are going to launch a full-scale evacuation effort to get the troops out of Europe. And so they're going to remove an entire army really within a day or two, using every available ship or rowboat or yacht that's available in England to go across the channel and remove soldiers from the continent of Europe and transport them back to England for the defense of the island. Without standing armies in Europe, Germany's going to easily defeat the French. In June 17th of 1940, France is going to surrender to Germany. Hitler's going to make the French sign their surrender papers in the same rail car that the Germans signed the armistice ending World War I in. And so at this point, Great Britain is going to stand alone against Germany in Europe. There's a new prime minister, Winston Churchill, that's going to give the people hope and basically going to broadcast different ideas across England during this time. Churchill is very stubborn, very very stoic, very stiff upper lip, and he's going to give the English people a boost during this period of the war. Hitler and the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, are going to launch almost daily raids into Great Britain during this time frame. And originally they're going to be focused on military targets, but eventually some of those bombs are going to go off course and hit residential areas in England and in London. And the English are going to respond in kind. They're going to bomb Germany and attack them as well. But this is a period that's referred to as the London Blitz, the Blitzkrieg, in which the German Air Force tries to bomb the British into submission. Um, One of the advantages that England is going to have during this time is they're going to have the creation of radar that's going to allow the British Air Force to scramble its troops in time to get in the air once they realize that a bombing raid is underway. And by October of 1940, the cost to the German Air Force during this time frame of July, August, September of 1940 had been so severe that the Luftwaffe basically calls off the idea of an invasion, of softening up the English for an invasion. They call it the idea of an invasion, and they just commence to just typical bombing that you're going to see throughout the war. A couple pop culture references that you'll notice. If you pay attention, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia actually starts off during the London Blitz, where the children Peter and the others, I don't know the four names. The four children go to the mansion in the countryside because of the Blitz, because of the bombings, and that's why they leave London. So while that's going on, and the British and the Germans are squared off in kind of this stalemate, separated by the English Channel. America across the Atlantic Ocean is also looking for ways to help. They want to stay out of the war. Roosevelt wants to stay out of the war, but wants to ensure that there is a Europe left. And so as Hitler's victories mounted, the Americans start to enact something called the Selective Service Training Act, which is a peacetime draft, and we start to build up our armed forces during this time frame. We triple the size of our military in 1940. We look for ways to supply England with supplies. We increase our defensive spending from our defense spending from $1.8 billion to $6 billion in 1941. Roosevelt's going to win a third term in an election in 1940 and lead us throughout the Second World War, almost to the end before he dies. Roosevelt's going to give Britain outdated World War I supplies from the United States, basically because the United States doesn't need them. We're going to make new supplies if we are going to go to war. And England's in much more dire straits than America at this point, right? We give England 50 aging destroyers for naval bases in the Caribbean and Canada that England is no longer going to man or take care of. They're more interested in protecting their own island, and America during this time frame is more interested in making sure that the Germans aren't going to gain an upper hand in our backyard, in their backyard in Canada and the Caribbean. Because of United States laws, Roosevelt is actually limited in lending England money to fight. So he gets around this by basically loaning Britain goods. So instead of giving England money to buy things, we create this Lend-Lease Act where we lend or lease war materials to any nation that we believe is critical to the survival of the United States or to the safety of the United States. And Roosevelt and the United States government starts to refer to themselves as this arsenal of democracy. And really during this time frame, I mean, it's going to be England and the United States are the only two democratic governments that are going to be left. In August of 1941, Roosevelt and Churchill meet, and they sign something referred to as the Atlantic Charter. This is kind of interesting that Roosevelt and Churchill are going to meet in August of 41. If you look at it, the United States does not enter the war until December of 1941, so for another 5 months. And they're already discussing what the plan should be, how the world's going to look after the war is over. So how is what's the world going to look like after America and England defeat fascism? Yet the only one of those two governments is actively fighting fascism at that point, and that is England. And I'm going to go ahead and scoot forward here because this is they meet to spell out the shape, and they feel that all people should be free. They should get to choose their government. They're going to call that self-determination. They're going to meet on a battleship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. and basically kind of signed this alliance deal. It's 5 months ahead of America entering the war. Um, During that time frame, Germany is going to create a blockade along Britain. They're going to use their U-boats, their submarines to sink tons of supplies, just like in World War II. They're going to sink American boats. In fact, in October of 1941, the first United States troops are killed in the Atlantic Ocean. Roosevelt's going to send out what we're going to refer to as neutrality patrols to watch for U-boats off the American shores. City skylines outside of major shipping ports are going to be blackened at night, so submarines can't sit off the coast and see the silhouettes of ships leaving port. And probably the biggest change that's going to happen, well, the biggest change in the war until Pearl Harbor that's going to happen comes about in June of 1941. And that is going to be the German operation called, they refer to as Operation Barbarossa, in which they invade the Soviet Union. With France under control and Britain at a stalemate, Hitler tries to defeat the Soviets before America has a chance to enter the war. And so while the Soviets and Germany had signed this non-aggression pact, it's a very uneasy peace, and both prepared for conflict with each other. And so as the Soviets deal with the invading German army, both sides probably get more than they anticipated. I believe that the German army was expected to roll through Russia very, very quickly. And the Russians basically kind of just trade land for time at this point. It's June of 1941, and the armies start to fall back, and they don't engage. They don't engage the German armies in any full-scale combat out in the open. And just like with Napoleon, they burn all the crops. They make sure that there's nothing for the invading armies to use. Okay. Churchill and Roosevelt basically provide aid to the Soviet Union. And so Stalin, who was kind of out on an island by himself, the Soviet Union and that non-aggression pact, now joins the United States and England in their fights to defeat Hitler. We see that. Those are kind of repeat slides, but you can see here on this final map, this is where we're going to stop before stop for this unit or this week. You can see the expansion here in the blue of Nazi Germany deep into Russia. By December of 1941, they're going to be on the doorsteps of Moscow. They've taken they've besieged places like St. Petersburg up in here. They've conquered Norway. They've conquered Finland. Sweden maintains its neutrality. Spain is a neutral nation. Ireland's a neutral nation. Great Britain and Iceland are the only two European nations outside of Russia that are fighting the Nazis in June of 1941. And so that's where we're going to end. And then we will bring America into the war here in this next unit and see where we get from there. So hopefully we got something out of that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.